In the beginning of the biblical narrative, there's only one prohibition given to man: not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is incredible. With all that God could have stipulated, he just made one prohibition: not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why? Because on the day that you do, you will be as God, knowing good and evil. What it really means is you will end up playing God, defining good and evil. And that's the one prohibition. Don't play God. And so what happens, that's the one thing they violated. They wanted to play God. And look at our world today, what has happened. All trees are protected except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Moral reasoning is completely up for grabs while we've got our feet firmly planted in midair on moral reasoning. So what happens? Every word dies the death of 1,000 qualifications because we have redefined everything. It is not good enough on the plane for them to tell us not to mess with the smoke detector. They have to tell us not to touch, tamper, disable, or destroy, because each one has a different meaning. Otherwise, in a court of law, you'll say, I didn't tamper with it, I just destroyed it. Or, this is the kind of thing where words become used and misused and abused. I heard one lawyer telling me he never asks a witness, were you ever alone in the room with so-and-so when it happened? Because technically he can say no, because if you're with somebody, you're really not alone. But the point of the question is completely lost. So here's the thing. Who defines good and evil in any life? Sam Harris has made a valiant effort in his The Moral Landscape, which, pardon my saying so, but it's a sophomoric attempt at trying to explain moral reasoning. How a man of his intelligence actually expected that book to get anything but criticism roundly from philosophers and even from scientists, to say, is this what you've spent all your doctoral work doing, trying to tell us that goodness is nothing more than well-being, and tautologically going through to explain how well-being actually comes about? They can't. Trying to define moral reasoning apart from God, philosophers have tried it and they have absolutely failed. So here's the bottom line, starting point for me in any conversation. Is life sacred or purely material? If life is sacred, then the resultant definitions will have to be treated as sacred. If it is desacralized, then everything is desacralized, not just sexuality. Life itself is desacralized, and so rapacious acts, murder, and all of them are purely pragmatic expressions of one who is expressing their profanity. Richard Dawkins, in one of his talks, said, nothing is ultimately good or evil, we are all just dancing to our DNA. If he had a loved one in his family who was gang raped, like a couple of women in India, and it's hit the news there, and front and center in every discussion, in every open forum, would Dawkins really say it was a man and a gang dancing to their DNA? Or is something inherently evil being committed? So the issue is really not sexuality or abortion. The issue is life sacred, or is life matter and merely profane? On that, all the other discussions follow. If you desacralize life, then these are just perfunctory things. But if life is sacred, then so is the behavioral pattern. So to me, engaging them with, I move them away from the particulars, because that divides to the bottom line on which we can find some harmony. And if we don't find harmony there, then the secondary level naturally follows in two different directions. And again, we have to be very, very careful that we don't demonize the person of a counter perspective. Once you do that, you have lost the discussion. Stay with the idea and respect the person. And my mother used to say, once you've cut off a person's nose, there's no point giving them a rose to smell.